Hello, everyone, and welcome to our school informational meeting recap. I will be reviewing today our reopening information that was presented on Wednesday, May 19th. So before we get started, I'd like to get you acquainted with our administration staff. My name is Gabriel Diaz. I am the principal at Golden Valley Middle School. Also, there is Shauna White, vice principal, and Diane Bonjour, vice principal. So after this meeting, should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us by emailing us directly, by going to our website, or giving us a call at the front office at 909-881-8168. What I would like to do first is review our presentation objectives. Today we will share on how the San Bernardino City Unified School District and Golden Valley Middle School will return to in-person instruction for the 2021 and 2022 school year. This slide represents what we have been working on as a district, school site, and staff for our eventual return to campus. As per the California Department of Health, if best practices and trends continue, the next school year can begin by offering full in-person instruction to all students. So what that means is a full day, 5 days per week. And of course, some students, staff, and families may continue to require accommodations, and we're prepared to do that. If you focus your view to the trunk of the tree, it does outline the areas that we've been focusing on as a district for our return. We're looking at the facilities and safety, the fiscal support that will be required, the staffing that will be required, the communication, the instructional model, and the social emotional supports that are going to be needed for students when they return. So we've been working through April and June and into the summer of 2021, and the planning that we've been completing has been for the return of the 2021-2022 school year. The plan is to offer in-person instruction, to also have a distance learning option and a blended option. The district will also be able to support students by offering a virtual academy for the 2021 and 2022 school year. In this slide, we will cover a short video from SBCUSD that outlines some of the safety measures as we return to school.
Good evening, families and community. So we know that tonight's primarily around the upcoming educational options that you'll have, but we did want to take a moment to remind you of the safety measures that we discussed in our last town hall meeting and that will be in place. So our school district receives weekly and sometimes daily updates from our state and county public health officials. I myself am on conference calls with our county Department of Public Health at least 5 times a week, getting routine updates from them and from the state of California. So we have a good handle on the things that are coming. These are some of the basic safety measures that we've all learned as the primary means of keeping each other safe through the pandemic. So what you'll experience is a pre-arrival self-evaluation. We're going to ask that you check your kids before you send them to school. We do that in our household, make sure everybody's feeling well. And if they're not feeling well, report that to the school. We will have pre-entry temperature scanning machines that will also check to see if the child and our staff are wearing their face coverings correctly. Face coverings are still mandatory. So there's been a lot of buzz out there about being vaccinated, not needing to wear it. We know in our environment, as far as education and in buildings and in a working environment, that face coverings are going to stay mandatory for a little while now. There will be exceptions and exemptions if your child or our staff member have a medical accommodation, and we'll work through that individually with you. One of our other guiding principles through COVID is minimizing large groups or mixing of groups. So we're going to try to keep the groups small and together so that we don't have the mixing. And then should a child start exhibiting signs and symptoms of COVID or need to be evaluated, we'll have an isolation area within the school. We'll have staff there that's trained to evaluate them and talk to you as a parent, give you a call, find out what's going on, if it's allergies, if it's asthma, if it's something new, and so that we can work with you to keep your child in school. We're going to be avoiding the sharing of materials. So we're not going to have kids sharing a bunch of stuff. They'll all be assigned their items. The allowing for additional ventilation. So in all of our classrooms, we've placed HEPA air scrubbing units. So this is, in essence, giving us hospital grade air quality in the classrooms. This is a huge endeavor. It was a huge step that we took to make sure that the air quality inside the classrooms is at top notch. And then we will have available for use hand sanitizer, and we'll be encouraging the kids to wash their hands more frequently than we did in years past.
In the next slide, we will discuss the social emotional health supports that will be needed as students return to campus. To address student needs, the district will focus on SEL as it brings many benefits that you see listed above. Some of the benefits can include improving students coping with anxiety and to improve interpersonal skills and academic performance. As a result, we will proactively address social, emotional, and mental health needs of staff and students. The district is planning to offer district-wide SEL instruction through Second Step for K-8 and School Connect for 9th and 12th graders. Students that will be attending summer school will also participate in daily SEL lessons as they adjust to in-person school. Counselors will be prepared to provide small group instruction to support students that are dealing with the anxiety or depression, or also by helping them through coping strategies. In addition, we will provide mental health therapy through the district's HEART team and our partnership with Victor Community Support Services and IHP Navigators. And lastly, we will continue to provide youth mental health first aid trainings to our students and staff. In this next slide, we will also focus on the social emotional learning for all students. All district students will benefit from social emotional development. And the way that we plan to do that is to provide a series of lessons that are dedicated to student SEL development that are to be utilized inside and outside the classroom. We will also focus on the climate and culture of our campus by setting high expectations and to provide high levels of support to ensure that students achieve. We'll be utilizing proactive, instructive, and restorative classroom practices. One example of that is community building circles that allow the students to deepen their self-awareness. They give them opportunities to recognize and develop their self-management and to expand on their social awareness. In the academic area, we will be offering instructional practices that are inclusive, engaging, and relevant, such as cooperative and collaborative learning in the classroom and discussions to challenge students with SEL competencies and practicing new skills. In this next slide, I will talk about the Tier 2 response for students should they need additional SEL support. Counselors are present at every site to help with interventions, small groups, to support with coping strategies for any student that may be suffering from anxiety, depression, also to help with self-management and attendance support. Additionally, we will continue to identify students through database decisions, referrals from teachers, family members, and we are also giving students the ability to self-refer. We also realize that a few students will need individual mental health therapy beyond a school counselor. So we'd like to provide access to mental health therapy through the HEART team from the Student Wellness and Support Services Office or through our partners such as Victor Community Support Services, Uplift Family Services, and IEHP. So let's talk a little bit about physical health. Physical health requires the district to develop a COVID safety plan that includes infection prevention measures and supports should a staff member or student become ill while on campus. What it requires the district to do is to have a safety plan that is in alignment with the California Department of Public Health and the San Bernardino County requirements. The district infection prevention protocols include a screening and monitoring process. It's important to remember for any COVID-related symptoms, please stay home. Also, daily pre-arrival screening questions should be asked before sending your student to school. Questions such as, do they have a fever? Do they have any COVID symptoms? Or have they been in contact with anybody that is COVID positive? Upon arrival, students, staff, and visitors will complete daily screening and temperature taking. And finally, infection prevention measures include mask wearing, hand washing, and physical distancing. So let's talk about the health measures that will take place. All sites will have a COVID liaison. This person will be responsible for daily screening and temperature checks, contact tracing of COVID infections as needed, will facilitate COVID testing as needed or required, and will supervise potentially COVID positive students in the isolation room. Any student that develops symptoms at school will be sent to the health office for support. If they have COVID symptoms, they will be supervised by the COVID site support liaison. They will be isolated away from other students and staff and will be sent home quickly. Students identified should get tested for COVID and quarantine at home, and students may return to school when there is an absence of fever and abnormal temperature for a minimum of 3 days with no use of fever-reducing medicines, when improvement in respiratory symptoms occur, and after a minimum of 7 days since symptoms initiated. In the previous slides, we reviewed district health measures and prevention protocols, and now we will review SBCUSD safety measures and how they will look at Golden Valley Middle School. SBCUSD safety measures include the following: pre-arrival self-evaluation and pre-entry temperature and face covering screenings, mandatory face coverings for all persons on site with exceptions for medical accommodation or disability. We'll work to minimize large groups or mixing of groups, and also to isolate for any symptomatic individual while investigating. We'll avoid sharing of materials across groups and allow for ventilation of HEPA air scrubbing filtration systems, and we will also have available the use of hand sanitizer and hand washing stations. So let's talk about changes you will see at the administration building. The front office will be on a modified schedule and shall adhere to COVID-19 guidelines. That includes face masks, social distancing, and hand sanitizing. Front office hours will remain the same from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. for phone calls and messages, and you can also email at any point during the day. In-person office hours, however, have changed. Those times will be from 8:15 to 1:45 p.m. and from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. And the primary reason for that change is because our front office staff will be used for screening and temperature taking in the morning, and also for site release and dismissal. Visitors are encouraged to call the front office to schedule an appointment, and we will schedule for either an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting, and you may also wait until office hours are open. To schedule an appointment, please call 909-881-8168. In this slide, we will talk about classroom materials and procedures. More than anything, we're going to avoid sharing of materials across groups. We will also allow for ventilation and HEPA air scrubbing filtration systems, and we will make available to students the use of hand sanitizer and hand washing stations. Passing period procedures include pre-arrival self-evaluation and pre-entry temperature and face covering screenings, mandatory face covering, and again, only exceptions will be made for medical accommodations or disability. We will also focus on minimizing large groups or mixing of groups. In this slide, we will talk about breakfast and lunch procedures. The first thing that will take place is meals will be handed out as a sack lunch or as a sack breakfast. Also, all meals will be individually wrapped, and options will be reduced to help the speed of service. It's important to note that at the start of the school, meal counts will be recorded via a tally sheet. And what that means is that students will not need to use their finger to punch in the keypad, their code or ID. And the purpose of that is to minimize contact and limit exposure. Next, let's discuss restroom and hand washing. It's important to know that restrooms will follow the capacity labeling on the door, and that we have added additional supervision so that restrooms will be monitored during passing period and lunch for occupancy requirements. Restrooms will also be cleaned periodically throughout the school day, and we've also added additional hand washing stations that will be located outside of restrooms to facilitate social distancing. In this slide, we will talk about student common areas and procedures. It's important to remember that prior to arrival, all students will perform a self-screening at home. Also, upon entry, every student will conduct a temperature screening before moving into a common area. Common areas have been adjusted for social distancing, and lunch and breakfast areas have been expanded to include additional tables in the lower eating area, as well as in some hallways and other common spaces. Physical education and locker room procedures. PE will proceed with modifications, and what that means is a combination of physical activities as well as instructional lessons that will focus on diet, exercise, and healthy habits. Social distancing will be in place, and face masks will be required for all physical education activities. It's also important to remember that for the first 3 weeks of school, students do not dress, so there will be more guidance to come on procedures and locker room expectations. Symptomatic individuals procedures. It's important to know that we will follow the same guidance as described in the slide with SBCUSD health measures. Students with fever or COVID-related symptoms will be sent to the health office for support. They will be supervised by the COVID site support liaison, and students exhibiting COVID-positive symptoms will be isolated from other students and staff. And again, contact will be made to have the student picked up. Dismissal procedures will be as follows. All exits will be open to increase student flow and social distancing, and we have adjusted supervision areas and responsibilities to encourage students exit the campus and to adhere to social distancing regulations. In this slide, we will provide a transportation overview. So let's first talk about the current state of transportation. There is a limited fleet of buses and drivers. Therefore, the focus will be on minimizing capacity as best possible. And what that means is reducing the number of students on a bus to increase social distancing. Safety precautions and protocols remain the same. So before boarding a bus, all students will conduct a COVID home screening, and face coverings will be worn by all students. If weather permits, windows can be opened for ventilation, and all buses will be sanitized after each group of riders. So let's talk about students with special needs. Number one, schools and teachers will establish and promote a culture of hand hygiene. This can be done in various ways through visual cues, posters, stickers, and social stories, as well as physical distancing markers throughout the campus. Also, the use of shared equipment will be limited in all classrooms. Number two, students with disabilities must not be excluded from educational environments if their disability prevents them from wearing a face covering. Per the California Department of Ed guidelines, if a student with disability is unable to wear a mask properly or cannot tolerate a mask, then they should not do so. In-person speech RSP programs will be provided to students with appropriate face coverings and/or masks, PPE, and cleaning in between sessions. Number four, students have available sensory rooms that may be utilized with proper masking and social distancing and disinfection. It's important to remember that sensory rooms are provided to students as valuable opportunities to relax, to reawaken their senses in a controlled space, especially during this time. Number five, one-to-one services will be provided based on individualized determination to maintain mental, physical health, and safety for the purpose of accessing learning. And six, parents will have an option to continue IEP meetings via Google or Zoom. And finally, these recommendations come from the California Department of Public Health, and our special ed classes will not change from a typical academic year. In this slide, we will provide you with information about the Virtual Academy that offers independent studies programs. SB 98, the law that allowed districts to offer distance learning in the 2020-21 school year, expires June 30th, 2021. Once it expires, EdCode only allows districts to offer education through virtually through independent studies. So what that means is that a school transfer is needed from the student's current school into the Virtual Academy. It's important to note that in order for a student to attend the Virtual Academy, they will no longer be enrolled in their home school. If a student transfers into the Virtual Academy and decides that this learning option is no longer wanted, they can request a transfer back to their previous school. However, it's not guaranteed that there will be space available at the previous school. To accommodate for a variety of needs, the district is offering 3 options that are described in this slide. If you direct your attention to the first column, TK through 8 teacher-led virtual programs will mirror the current distance learning model that your child has experienced this school year. In the middle column, the K-12 online virtual learning will offer the Edmonton digital curriculum and will offer the A through G component for high school. And finally, in the third column, TK through 12, traditional independent studies requires more parent support and teaching for younger students, and it has the least amount of direct instruction from teachers. And finally, we have arrived to our question slide. For questions on attendance, we expect attendance procedures to be the same as they were before COVID. COVID positive absences will be excused in the same manner as other illnesses. However, if a student gets a severe case and misses large amounts of school, that will be taken into consideration. This does conclude our parent informational meeting. However, should you have any questions, please use the QR code on this slide. You will be directed to a Google form where you can leave your question as well as your contact information. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you at the start of our new year.